Hello, and thank you for joining in to the Josiah Media Festival Workshop Week 4. Today we have a fabulous set of presenters. We have Sergio Guerra from The Darkness, and he's going to continue with part 2 of prosthetic fantasy makeup. We also have Erik Bosse, a filmmaker who lives in New Orleans, who spent the previous 15 years of his life here in San Antonio and was instrumental in the creation of the Josiah Festival. He's going to be doing a workshop on some of the new technologies and new software that you can use for real-time incorporation of live video into theater and dance performances. It's going to be a great day. I'm here stuck right now in the technical side of the process in doing carpentry work. And carpentry work and set design are two critical things that you as young filmmakers and producers need to understand. Find yourself someone who loves to work with tools and knows how to make things cheaply and that are safe. Many times you work with designers who have great ideas on paper, but they can't make what they drew. So one of these days we're going to have a workshop on carpentry and set design. But today we have makeup and live video production. So enjoy the day.
Hi, how's it going? My name is Sergio Guerra. I'm a special effects makeup artist here in San Antonio, Texas. I want to say thank you very much for being here in this virtual class. With the pandemic, we were all trying to do things a little bit differently. Thanks to the Josiah Film Festival for having me, and I think this is a really cool opportunity for everybody to still do a bunch of really cool stuff, even if we can't all be there in person together. So anyways, at 2005, I started The Darkness, which is my own special effects company. Got together with a bunch of really cool people that enjoy making monsters, that enjoy filmmaking, and we just started this for real, you know. And The Darkness has been around, like I said, since 2005 now. We do special effects for film, for TV, for commercials. I do consulting for haunted houses. We do masks and props for the Halloween industry. You know, so a little bit of everything, pretty much. And so with independent film, you know, I work with directors and producers a lot. We've shot our own films and stuff like that. And it's real important that you're able to make things last with independent film. And so you guys might already kind of know that, right? Especially with low budget, you have to kind of, you know, give it all you got and, you know, do the best with the materials you've got. So what I wanted to kind of show you guys today was just some basic effects that you can do with materials that you don't have to spend a lot of money on yourself. You can pretty much go and buy any of this stuff like at a Walmart or like some local store near you. You can probably also find a lot of this stuff now on Amazon. A lot of the things that, you know, we do here, like I have on my website and stuff. Around Halloween time it gets a little, you know, tough because things sell out, but you can always contact me if you like any of this kind of stuff. But yeah, with no further ado, hopefully let's get started and make some cool stuff. Okay, this is my brother Raul. He's going to be helping us out with our makeup today. Again, so I'm going to show you a couple of things that you could do that are fairly inexpensive and that you can use for your own films in various different ways. First up is going to be a bruise. So if you have somebody that gets beat up, you start off with sort of a yellow color in the highest point, and don't go too bright because the yellow is pretty strong. So you just kind of want to lay in a little bit of color in there. Good thing with bruises is you don't want to get in too specific, so you don't want to sort of draw a circle. You kind of want to spot it on, because that's how real bruises kind of are made, you know. And you'll see that with the darker colors in a little bit if you can't see it very well with the yellow. So once I got kind of like in the high points in the bone where he would have been hit more, then I kind of can stop with the yellow. Just make sure I use my sponge here to blend it out a little bit into the surrounding areas. And we move on with the next color. And we're going to use a little bit of red around here. Kind of where we place the yellow, also sort of in a spotty way and not too dark. It's better to be too light and add, you know, more color later than to start off by putting way too much color, and then you sort of have to wipe the whole thing off. but you're sort of going around the area where you laid down the yellow in spots, and then sort of blending those out again with your sponge, sort of the yellow into the red, not vice versa. Once the red is done, you're going to add a little bit of sort of like a purple color, and as you get away from the main area where the yellow is or whatever, it's sort of like where the colors will be slightly deeper. So we're going to put a little bit of purple in here. Again, kind of splotchy, right where at the edge of where you put some of the red. Turn your just a little bit. Again, on the soft tissue, I'm putting a little bit more. I'm doing it with my brush so I can have a little bit more control, and then just sort of wiping it down with my finger. And again, the main thing is keeping it where it's not a perfect on here. You want to make sure that it's sort of stipply, so that it looks more realistic. I'm going to go in with a little bit of green. And this will be at the very, very outer edges. And it's kind of like the yellow, you want to keep it light so that it doesn't, because it's kind of strong. You just want enough of it showing through so it can look like it's, you know, different layers of the skin showing through in damage. At this point, you can go in with another brush or another sponge. You can use a sponge that's got a little bit more texture, like this one, and you can put in a couple of dots of the darker colors, sort of like there's some broken capillaries. Close your eyes. Just like on the surface. You can barely probably see that. Come a little closer to the camera so they can see that a little bit. So you can barely see those little dots that I'm putting in there, but they do give a little bit of texture. And so it brings it all, makes it a little bit more realistic. And like I said, less is more, so what I usually do is I put it on a little stick like this and then wipe some of it off so that you don't end up putting so much that it's going to be very, very noticeable, you know? It just needs to barely be there. And you could wipe some off on your own hand also if you want. I'm going to do the same thing with the purple. Using another part of the sponge. And so as a final thing that you can do on something like this is put a little bit of Vaseline just on a Q-tip, just kind of like that, and then you're going to go over, especially in the high points, and that way it can sort of look like that skin is thinner, and you know, when they sort of hit somebody in the eye, they sort of call the thing a shiner. That's kind of why, because the skin gets really thin as it sort of like, you know, gets filled with blood. So at least on the very high point, or high points, you could put a little bit of this on here, and that way you get kind of like an actual shine to it. So look up. Okay, and come closer to the camera. This way a little bit. Right there. As long as everything's melted, blended together, then again, you can have a pretty good looking like bad bruise. Okay, so we're back. We're going to try something a little bit different. Another thing that can really help out with your quality when you're doing like a film, especially a low budget film, is prosthetics. There's a couple of different ways to make prosthetics. It's kind of like an involved process, so I wanted to show you kind of like the easiest way for you to get your hands on something that will look good on camera, and also that's very quick to actually use without a lot of expertise. So that way, if you've got to do it yourself, or you have to have somebody that'll help you that's just kind of getting started, they don't have to go through the whole like casting an actor's face and making prosthetics or whatever. For smaller things, these things work out. You can find them at stores now, and they're called like FX transfers. Now there's like latex prosthetics, there's like for bullet wounds and stuff like that. This one's like a bullet wound, and I promised I wouldn't get too gory for these, so we'll do hold on to this one for another time. What we're going to use today is going to be more like some cuts and stuff, so it's sort of like this. And but it's any of these transfers can work. Like I said, latex prosthetics work as well, but these are probably the best bang for your buck because like I said, they're already pre-pigmented, so they already kind of come prepared and ready to go. And you'll see in a little bit when I show you how to do this that you can really blend them into your skin very quickly, very well, without a lot of experience, and that definitely will help your production value on things like this. And now if you wanted to get more intricate and more involved with like prosthetics and building up like noses and major features, then definitely that's a little bit more involved. You can always look me up and or ask me questions anytime. I'm always up for answering questions and to help out. So just look me up online and you can do that. I might have some like videos like on YouTube and stuff that explain that kind of process, but I really want to give you guys like just some tools that you can use on your films like right away that'll help you out without having to go and spend a lot of money, a lot of time like researching and doing these other things. So FX transfers are probably the Tinsley FX transfers are the best to use, but there's plenty around on the internet, and like I said, you can find some with me, or you can find some on just even on Amazon. So let's show you how to do it. All right. So, like I said, we're going to use these kind of like cuts that you can probably use for any, tons of different reasons in a film on your actors, actresses. The first thing you want to do when you get this, like a transfer like this, just open it up. A cool thing about these transfers is you pretty much don't need any adhesive because they're already made out of adhesive. So the actual material that these are made of is prosthetic adhesive that's just been dried out. So you literally don't need to add anything extra. It's just done with water. But when you get the prosthetic that you like, whatever it is, bullet wound, scratches, whatever, take it out of its little package here. Be very careful with it because what you're going to have to do is usually these things come with a, let's see, they come with like a little film on top. Remember, like I said, it's all adhesive, so it's actually all very sticky. And so what you want to do is when you first get it, is find an edge, like right here. Okay, I don't know if you guys can see that. Find an edge and then peel it up. And we're going to peel the whole thing off, okay? And then sort of stick it right back on the other way. So we want the prosthetic side down onto the paper, okay? The way it comes. And so we're going to do that here. Pull it up. And then we're going to put it back down. And what you want to do is you want to try and get these prosthetics where you can touch back down, especially here in between when there's a couple of different ones in the same place. You want to touch back down underneath it and sort of like squeeze out any air bubbles sort of from the actual prosthetic itself too. Don't press down too much on it because on the actual prosthetic you don't want to squish it, but you want to make sure that this makes contact with that paper underneath. And the reason for that is because this paper, we're going to wet it in a little bit, and so as it kind of like allows moisture in, it will release the adhesive, and you'll see this in a little bit when I put it on, but it'll release the adhesive and it'll stick down to your skin. So we want it to come off of the paper, out of the little translucent paper, and stay on the white paper. So every little air bubble that you can get out of there, the better, okay? And then do the same thing for the other one. Okay, once you know you got as many air bubbles out as you can, then you can go ahead and take some scissors if you've got a piece like this that's got multiples, and we're going to cut them out individually, okay? Now you want to leave some space in there because we want the adhesive, which is like all around here, okay? We want the prosthetic edge not to be too thick, so we're going to kind of cut like right down the middle here, and then trim them up a little bit so they're more like to the shape of the actual wound, okay? So you kind of won't see that very well from here, but I'll just try and keep it up where you can sort of get an idea. So I cut it like that, and then I'm going to just cut around now the actual prosthetic just to make this a little bit more manageable. And when you're cutting it, just the closer you can get to the edge of the prosthetic, without actually cutting into the prosthetic itself. And the way you could tell that is the prosthetic itself has a little bit of color already. Like the more translucent area still has prostate in it, but it's very thin, so it's very see-through. So you definitely don't want to cut into an area where you could see color, because that's already obviously a thicker part, and it'll be harder to hide the edge. So stay as close as you can to the color, but don't go so close that you end up making your prosthetic edge too thick. Okay, so once you've got them cut out like this, pretty close to the edge that you're going to want, you can kind of figure out where you want to place them on your actor. So for these two, I'm going to put the bigger one sort of like right here, and then maybe the smaller one like right over my eyebrow here, like that, So maybe something, I crashed against something, or maybe I was in a car crash or whatever. So that's kind of where I'm going to go. Now what we want to do is, I'm going to start with the big one. Is we're gonna remove the thin plastic piece that we put on earlier, okay? So when you're removing that, you want to do it slowly so that you can kind of see, and I'll show you when I want to do it, but so you can kind of make sure that prosthetic is stuck to the paper. Now the paper is what's going to stay behind, so once this little see-through paper is over, I'm going to place this down like this, and then you're going to be able to see this, okay? So make sure that you have your wound facing in the right direction. So I want this one like right here, like that. So I'm going to start off by peeling this off. Again, peeling the little see-through paper off, making sure as I'm peeling it that the prosthetic's staying down. If it's not, that means that you didn't press it far enough. So just press it up a little bit again, get all those air bubbles out, and then it should be stuck down to that paper. Okay, so as you can see, it's coming off. Now, it's really important that you don't do this part until you're ready to put the prosthetic on, because the longer you leave this out, that stickiness to it is gonna get dirt and just whatever's on in the air, and it's gonna make it less sticky. So you kind of want to wait until your actor's ready and you're ready to put it on. I already washed my face, but you want to wash your actor's face so that it can help to stick. And then I'm just gonna put this right where I want it. Okay, and once you put it down, it's going to be kind of difficult to remove. So make sure you get it right where you want it beforehand, and then press down as much as you can onto your skin. Okay, now you should feel it getting stuck already. So once you feel that, then that means you're good. The prosthetic is still also stuck to the paper. So what we're going to do is you're going to get like some napkins or a sponge, whatever works better for you, and some water. And we're just going to dip your napkins or something in the water, because we want to get it very saturated. Okay, and not so much that it's dripping all over the place, but you want your little towel or your napkin or whatever to be pretty wet, and we're going to place it over there. It's kind of like the what are they called? The transfer tattoos, where you put water on top of it for a little while and then it transfers over. That's pretty much what's happening here. We're wetting this, just kind of dampening that paper, and as the water soaks into the paper, it releases the adhesive from the prosthetic. And so because of that, we'll be able to peel up the paper by itself, and the adhesive is still stuck in our skin. It's going to leave behind the wound right where we wanted it. So give it a little bit of time when you do this. Make sure that you're pressing down on all edges of the paper, because the whole paper needs to be wet. As it's soaking up more of the water, it'll naturally loosen, which is fine. But the less you have to move it, the better. So leave it there for at least 60 seconds. Make sure it's nice and saturated with water. Once you think that you've got it, you can kind of pull away your paper here, and you should be able to see it here. That's, you know, which parts are like damp and which ones aren't. It looks pretty alright, but I'm gonna add a little bit more water just to be on the safe side. This step is definitely better for you to be overly cautious with, because the result is really nice. If you're not too impatient, if you get too impatient, then you'll end up having to just use another one. So it's, you know, wasted time, wasted materials. So just make sure that there's enough water in that paper that it's nice and moist. Okay, and once you believe that that's the case, you can check it. You can grab a little edge here and start kind of pulling it off. I don't know if you guys can see how that's coming off pretty simply. Okay, so if you notice any resistance, then just put the water back on it. Okay, but it's coming off pretty good right now. So, you know, there we go. No paper's done. Now, these prosthetics are made with that adhesive, like I said, so there's a thin film over it. So what I like to do is once you have this on you like that, is you can get another little brush, just with some water, like some brush with just water, and I'm gonna literally brush and push into it, because some of the film, when you're taking off that paper, lifts up, and so there's a little bit of whiteness that is like visible, especially if you're gonna get like close-ups and stuff like that. And you can sort of press that back down with a little bit of water. The water will keep your brush from sticking. So just put ample amounts of water on your brush and just kind of go back in and make sure, you know, don't pull on it, sort of just press. Make sure that you press down all over where the skin is of that adhesive, and you'll practically see the edge like disappear for you. And that's probably the best thing about these kinds of prosthetics, that, you know, they're ready to go, they're very quick to use, it takes very little makeup to hide any edges. Like, as you can tell right now, it's already, I mean, that's already pretty good looking. Very little makeup to make it look more realistic, and so, you know, you're ready to go. So if you got a car crash, you've got, like, you know, you can even make zombies with some of this stuff. You put enough of these things around there, or a possessed look or whatever. You can literally just do piece by piece, wet it down. Once we're done with the other piece, I'll show you how to put a little bit of makeup on top of them to make them look good. But yeah, you can sort of just marry it all together, and you've got a full look without needing to do a whole face cast or anything like that. So anyways, I think it's pressed down pretty good right now. So I'm gonna kind of leave it like that, and I'm gonna go on to the next piece. But once you feel that it's pretty good, you can take that off. Make sure it's down on all angles. Find a little corner. Make sure that it's not coming up with the paper. And yeah, there we go. Came off the little paper. Again, really simple, really quick. I'm gonna get some water on my brush and just press down on it a little bit more, like I said, to get rid of that little thin film. And you know, now you have like two pretty nasty cuts, you know. And yeah, now we can just let them dry, or pat them down dry a little bit more yourself, and apply some makeup. Okay, so I'm gonna apply some makeup, just the part that's right over my eyebrow here. You can see a little bit of that white film, so I might even like darken that a little bit with regular makeup, just to kind of make sure there's not a sort of like, you know, cover on top of my eyebrow, just a little bit. And for makeup on this, you can use any kind of makeup, really. If you want it to last long, obviously, you know, you want to powder it also at the end, but you can use some regular, like, you know, Halloween type grease makeups or cream makeups. I'm going to use the alcohol-based paints, just because that's what I'm used to have right here. I have it all ready for me. But you can use anything really that you want. The key is, for these kinds of things, especially if it's it's not like a zombie, or it's not like anything else, like a monster or something, is that to keep it looking realistic, the prosthetics done most of the work for you. So to keep it looking realistic, you want to do very, very little makeup. If you overdo it, then you're kind of getting rid of the advantage that you already have, that this looks pretty real on its own, you know. So we want to add very little. You can add a little bit of like a red to kind of like around the edge, just to make it look a little bit more, you know, fresh, like, you know, like your skin is still hurting. Or if it's a little drier, you can add a little bit of, like, you know, a darker color. For this, literally, I'm gonna put very, very little of the red around that edge. So, and I'm gonna do it with my alcohol paint, like I said. And in case you don't know about the alcohol-based paints, it's just it's just paints that are it's a pigment, I'm sorry, that is broken down by alcohol, 99% alcohol. So you need some 99% alcohol, and nothing else. 97 won't work. 98 won't work. You need 99% alcohol. And so when you do that, it breaks down the pigment, and it sort of allows you to pick it up as a liquid, and then place it down as makeup. And as the alcohol evaporates, it will leave behind just that pigment that you made. So I like these because you can get really thin, but they're pretty expensive. So again, it's not necessary. You can just get a really thin makeup. And for something like this, like I said, that needs to stay a little bit more on the realistic side, I kind of like to keep it like thin. So I just kind of go in, add a little bit of red, a couple of dots, wipe a lot of it away with my own fingers. Just right where the edges are, because you're hopefully gonna try and hide those, and the color will help. Okay. Again, you just want to put enough that it's gonna, make it look a little bit raw. Okay. Not too much. I'm gonna do that here as well. And most of the time when you're doing makeup for a more realistic look, you don't want to draw a circle, you don't want to do anything like that. All this padding and stuff like that, it's really weird. But the less precise you try and make it, the more realistic it's going to look, because your real skin is broken up in different colors, So if it was just a straight, like if I was to just draw red on top of it, it's just going to look very, very fake. So yeah, and you can see now it's a little bit more, like maybe it's a fresh wound, right? You can add some blood, which we're going to do in a little bit. I'm going to put a little bit of that black, like I said, on that part of the eyebrow that's showing, just because I want to make sure that it doesn't look too covered up by that prosthetic. And I just need a little bit of that too. So just a little here. Take it all the way up to where the cut is. And down here also, just kind of follow down my own eyebrow. And that just kind of keeps the realism of, maybe it literally did cut right through my eyebrow there, So just a little bit of black to bring those little hairs back up. And you can leave it like this. You could do a little bit more bruising on top of that. So you could do a little bit of blood. I'm going to put just a tiny bit of blood from the blood that we made earlier, the thicker version. I'm going to get a little bit because the thick version will stay on a little bit longer. And again, this has already got makeup on it, so you don't want to cover up too much of the makeup. You don't want to overdo it, and then you kind of get rid of the realism that already comes with it. So just enough to keep it like nice and shiny in there. If you wanted to, I'm gonna get this is the thicker blood that we made. But I'm gonna get the other one a little bit, and then just maybe do a little bit of a drip. But I want this one to stay on here, so this thicker version will stay on a little bit longer. It'll stay looking nice and wet, and that makes it look a little bit more realistic,
Hello, I'm Erik Bosse, and we're going to be talking about live cinema. I've got a lot of devices on my desk here, several pieces of software running, so I'm going to hope that everything goes smoothly, and please bear with me if we have any technical snafus. I'm using the term live cinema here because it's a good umbrella term for the sort of work we'll be covering. Basically, it's a real-time editing and presentation of visual media, most often with a projector, but you can have monitors or other types of screens to show the images on. Most people are familiar with the work of a VJ, an artist who provides images to accompany a musical performance. And the same tools that the VJ can be used for a stage play or a dance performance. It could be a very rudimentary video backdrop. to aid in the telling of the story, or it could be more sophisticated, become a central element of the work, a true collaboration. There are also media artists that do solo works presented in galleries, theaters, or outdoor festivals. So let's define this live cinema as a collection of images which are projected in a manner that fits the moment. There might be a basic plan on how to present the imagery, but there will always be elements decided at that moment when the audience sees the work. So when I began working on these sorts of projects, they were small and personal, mostly for my own amusement. At first, it was using the cheapest software and hardware I could afford. It helped that I already had a video projector. And part of the appeal for me was shooting my own material. I came into filmmaking as a photographer, and I loved the camera work, going and collecting the images, and sometimes just having a large assortment of video and still images that can be manipulated and projected. And so after a few performance art projects, and I'll get to one of those later, I found myself in demand locally to provide projected backdrops, mainly for dance and theater. A choreographer who had relocated from Mexico to San Antonio sought me out for a series of collaborations. She had worked before with VJs and was having trouble finding anyone locally that understood a sort of a collaborative way of doing work, particularly with dancers. And since that meeting, we've worked on probably about a dozen projects. And I'll show you some footage of some of those. But I also drew the attention of Jumpstart Performance Company, and they hired me initially to provide projected imagery for a play. It was called The Last Thing You'll Ever See, and it called for 3 projectors, each able to be used independently. And that was something I'd never done before, and it turned out to be a really interesting project, and I continued working with Jumpstart on quite a few plays, and had a few of my own projects staged, which was a lot of fun. One of the nice things about live cinema, in my experience, is that each project is different. And I like those challenges, talking about having to use 3 projectors and sometimes 4 or 5. I think there was one where I used 7 different projectors, a couple of different computers, and trying to get all of this equipment hooked together can be a challenge. And if you like challenges, it's really rewarding. Let's look at a few works here. As you see in the background, I've got the software that I'm going to be using, and I've been using for some time, that's Resolume Arena. There's at least a dozen other programs to use, but since I already have this one and I have some projects already loaded up, let's kind of play around with it. Let me turn this over to that setting, and maybe the best way is just to get into the full screen output. This is a piece that I had done for Luminaria in collaboration with dancer and performance artist S.T. Shimmy. All of the images had been shot previously and were projected as she did dancing in front of the images. Here we've got a piece called Women Are Water, which was a gallery piece, and right outside the large floor-to-ceiling windows of the gallery, and this was at night, was a large pool, and we had performers inside the pool with images projected on the wall behind them and on them as well. And this one was with a dance ensemble, and we were using a live feed from the camera itself, as well as manipulating the images from that camera, as well as some of the other images that have been previously shot. Here we have a play which had a lot of projection components in it, but this particular actress being projected on the wall wasn't available to be in the show, so we created this bit where she's performing behind them. And this is a piece that I kind of cheated on because I didn't do any of this live, but I'm using the effects within Resolume to get some visual distortion. I was hoping to be able to do it live, but the event that I had prepared the work for wasn't really set up for that full live projection. This one was another Luminaria thing. I was working with choreographer Sami Atib, and we had so many projectors running and so much image mapping going on. Everything, all of the projectors are inside that building there in Hemisphere Park. And it was one of the more challenging things I'd ever done, and it was just great to walk around and see it running in its own sort of iterative way. And this was a play called Atari, and there's a lot of projection elements here, and this is just essentially a video backdrop with Vanessa Esquivel performing a dance piece in front of the projections. I think I had 3 projectors going for this particular piece. And this one here is a work with an aerialist and her students. The piece was called Echo. And live musicians performing music, the aerialists doing their aerial choreography. The music I was allowing to move and animate some of the imagery that I was projecting in the background, and it was a very technology-intensive work here. I had a GoPro mounted up in the ceiling. I had I think 4 different projectors going on there, 2 computers, and it turned out quite nice. So I think the best way to get into this sort of work is just to play, get some footage you've already shot, maybe some clips you've captured from elsewhere. You don't really need a projector at first. You can just use a computer monitor or your computer screen if you're wanting to see if this is something that might appeal to you. There are a lot of programs out there to work with. Resolume, as you see on the screen behind me, you can get it as a free version. There's some restrictions on it. I think maybe a watermark, and maybe it doesn't allow you to save your presets on it. But it's I think it's a great place to start. There's all sorts of YouTube tutorials out there to kind of get you up and running, and there's also, when I mentioned MIDI controllers, there's a lot of them out there that are relatively affordable. Just kind of you might even have some and you haven't thought about using them with something like this. But if it can send a MIDI note, then you can use it to play nice with the software for the most part. There's also wireless ones. This is a great Bluetooth, and this is a nice one because it's very colorful, and it's using its own sort of proprietary radio signal or something. This is one that I'm using right now simply because it's got a lot of buttons on it and a few sliders, so I can work with some of the effects. So let's move over to slightly different screen here. So just this whole idea of triggering images to let's say, instead of just abstractions, you want to sort of tell a somewhat narrative story, but you might want to have control over when you jump from like one camera angle to the other. And so here's some footage of some things I shot here in New Orleans with a friend of mine that was just doing some camera tests for a project that I think he's still hoping to get some funding for. So we're just kind of working with this actress starting off in a coffee shop, and she's having these sort of introspective moments, and here I am, I'm just pushing one button after another. We had also shot at one of the historic mansions in the French Quarter that I think was supposed to be this character going through a sort of a fantasy moment of imagining herself in another era. So, I mean, one could say that using software can give ideas about how to maybe even order your shots if you're doing a narrative film. And it can, I think, sort of open up a lot of possibilities. But, of course, one of the nice things about these programs is that, you know, they come with all sorts of effects, so, you know, you can just go crazy with your images. I just threw some things on here sort of at random and without any real finessing, but it's it can be a nice diversion, and also things like this, the more abstract the effects and stuff become, then more interesting it is to work with things such as music performances and things like that. And you can also, you know, bring in extra cameras. You can bring in several camera feeds and really add a lot of elements to it. That aerial piece with the GoPro was up in the rigging. It was a nice thing to cut to occasionally, just to trigger, using the Midi controller, that one camera feed that's looking straight down on one of the aerialists high above the stage. In my opinion, doing this live cinema, it helps, for filmmakers, it helps break you out of those linear constraints that that define traditional cinema. So I mentioned earlier about one of my first projects, my performance art project, my little artsy experiment I did mostly for fun. It was staged as part of The Whip, a works in progress program for performers, mainly dancers, but they also worked with theater people. So the idea for this thing came out of a lengthy reply I wrote to a friend who asked on social media what defined an art film. It was clear that what she was talking about was the stereotype of European New Wave cinema from the 50s and the 60s. And, she meant pretentious art film, right? But so I wrote this sort of tongue-in-cheek response, and I thought, it might make a really nice short film. And then that's when I thought, well, why not just make it some sort of live piece where I can have an actor on stage performing this monologue, and I'm off to the side. Actually, in this case, I was in the audience with a little controller with a very long USB cable snaking up to the computer and then the projector. And so that as my actor was doing this monologue, at the appropriate moments, I would trigger the images that were projected onto the wall behind him. Unfortunately, I don't have any good documentation of that, but I've got all of the clips, and so I think I'm going to recreate it. All right, let's see if I can make the magic happen. Title of the piece: Michelangelo Antonioni is dead. So picture me or someone on stage delivering these words with images projected on the wall behind me. I was 14 when I saw Michelangelo Antonioni's film Red Desert. See, I lived within walking distance of a wonderful repertory cinema. Some of my clearest memories of my teen years were spent in that darkened movie house. There were strange and fascinating movies, unlike any I could ever hope to see on TV, even late at night. I dragged my friends along, but they rarely accepted my invitations twice. They fidgeted in their seats, as though they were awaiting the dentist. What they found tedious, I found thrilling. Some of the things that seemed to have irked them were, in fact, simply innovative camera work, such as a couple sitting at a cafe, and the camera never leaves the tight shot of a coffee cup as the dialogue unfolds. The economy of the visual language. Or the opposite, where characters engage in animated conversations about art or philosophy while moving quickly down the sidewalk. The camera rushes to keep up. The scene is disjointed with frantic jump cuts. Such energy and passion. Sadly, my friends yearned for stories of gigantic, ravenous sharks, or even better, robots who lived in a galaxy far, far away. Why? I wondered, couldn't they generate the same enthusiasm for a story about, say, a middle-aged Italian man who paces in his downtown flat, immaculate in slacks and a white shirt? He flails about, hectoring a young woman sitting on the sofa with her arm crossed and silent, and accusing petulance. It was all sweet eye candy to me. How about a picnic? They are the slumming bourgeoisie and are dressed accordingly. They sit and wait. Wait for nothing. No reason for high drama or explosions. Just people eating fruit, cheese, bread, maybe some wine. The silence might become at times awkward, but there are always cigarettes, items to hide behind, rarely enjoyed. Montage is the very lifeblood of these movies. You know, you've seen them before. Coffee, cigarettes, wine. If there are quick shots of nature, the stamp of the modern industrial world should always be present. A quiet, wooded glen which opens onto a vista dominated by electrical transmission towers. Bees nosing about in flowers behind an industrial wire fence. A clump of weeds rustles in the breeze, and the camera reveals a broken-down car, its bumper jacked up. A grimly petulant 18-year-old girl in a sunflower yellow dress changes a flat tire as her 40-year-old boyfriend leans against the car, toying with an unlit cigarette, while in the front seat, the girl's younger effete brother lounges with his feet out the window as he sips a cappuccino and reads Balzac. A misspent youth watching all these films invariably carves out a little realm in the brain where simulated versions of Truffaut, Antonioni, or Fellini can be cobbled together in real time in the mind's own repertory cinema. I fancy I can conjure up a short one right now. We open with a tight shot of a masculine hand reaching across the outdoor cafe table to brush a fly off a pastry on a plate, extreme close-up of a single tear running down a young woman's face, oblique angle up at a church clock tower, medium shot of birds pecking at breadcrumbs, extremely tight shot of a masculine hand stroking the cigarette pack beside the pastry plate. Two shot of men concentrating at a chess game. Overhead shot of the chessboard. A hand comes in and hovers uncertain over the white cream, then retreats. Tight shot on a pretty girl's face. The masculine hand comes in and wipes a tear away. Tight shot of a masculine hand fishing out a cigarette. Her hand drapes over his. Low, tight shot of that church clock. 10:30. It chimes with the terrible reverberation. Medium shots of the birds. They scatter in a panic. Close-up of a finger descending onto the white queen. It's moved out of frame. The man places it into position. Close-up of the black king going down. The opponent stands and begins. Shouting. Wide shot of the cafe table. The man stands abruptly. He picks up his cigarettes, placing them in his pocket, and he walks off. Close-up of the girl. She's gathered herself now with a sort of petulant resolve. She looks around for the waiter. "Garçon," she shouts. He looks over and then rushes to her. Close-up of the girl. She beckons him in close. He lowers his ear to her lips. She whispers. He smiles mischievously. Tight shot of the pastry plate on the ground. The pigeons begin pecking at pieces of pastry. Simulated versions of memories from a darkened theater. Well, I think that could have gone a little smoother. Anyway, I hope some of you have found some interesting ideas. Maybe you've come up with ways to use technology to tell stories that you hadn't thought about before. Anyway, good luck. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed those workshops as much as I did. Sergio and Erik are brilliant artists. They do great work. Next week, November 16th, we're going to have Erica Missy return for part 2 of the Best of Animation 2006 through 2019. 8 new films you've never seen before. So we look forward to you logging on and enjoying Josiah Media Festival workshops. Take care.